You think your cat is being cold when she pulls away from you on a hard day. You tell yourself she's just independent, that she doesn't care what's going on with you, that cats are simply wired that way. But in reality, your cat already sensed something had changed in you before you said a single word, before you even admitted it to yourself. Here are 16 signs your cat picks up on you that you've been misreading for years, and the last one is the one even veterinarians can't fully explain. You assume your cat ignores you when you're upset because cats are supposed to be independent and emotionally checked out. But in reality, a 2019 study found that cats can tell their owner's distressed tone of voice apart from a calm or happy one, reacting differently to the sound pattern itself, not the words inside it. That means every time you mask your feelings with a flat, controlled voice, you're not protecting her from anything. You're simply removing the one channel she actually understands. Ignoring that tone for long enough teaches her your voice carries no useful information anymore, and that breaks the single most direct line of communication between you. You created this disconnect without realizing it, one calm-sounding bad day at a time. Speak to her directly, even if it's just her name, in a voice that matches how you actually feel. That alone keeps the channel open instead of slowly closing it for good. You think she's just sniffing your hand out of habit when you walk through the door, the same way she sniffs every object in the house. But in reality, a cat's nose holds around 200 million scent receptors, built specifically to catch chemical shifts in sweat and breath that your own brain can't register in yourself. Treating that sniff as routine means you miss the one moment she's actually reading you the most closely all day. You're the one closing the door on that information every single time you pull your hand away too fast. Over weeks, that habit trains her to stop bothering with the greeting altogether, because the input never gets the time it needs. Let the sniffing run its full course before you move your hand, even if it takes longer than you'd like. It isn't affection for its own sake. It's data she needs in order to know what kind of day you're actually having. You get annoyed when she suddenly starts following you from room to room on a day you're clearly struggling, treating it as clinginess you don't have the patience for. But in reality, attachment research out of Oregon State University found that cats display the same secure attachment behavior toward their owners that human infants display toward caregivers under stress, including proximity seeking specifically when the caregiver appears distressed. Shutting the door on her mid-follow, even casually, teaches her that checking on you during hard moments isn't welcome. You're the one training her to stop checking in, one closed door at a time, without ever meaning to. The result is a cat who eventually stops trying right when you need the connection most. Leave doors open on the days you feel off instead of closing them out of habit. That small gap is what lets the bond actually do its job when it matters. You read her sudden headbutts and full body rubbing as her just being needy or wanting something from you. But in reality, bunting spread sent from glands concentrated on her face, a calming behavior cats also use on each other specifically to diffuse tension between them. Pulling away mid-rub because you're busy or distracted cuts off the one tool she has available to actually lower the tension in the room. You're the one ending the single mechanism that was working in your favor. Do this enough times and she eventually stops initiating it altogether, removing a built-in stress reliever from both of your lives. Let a full headbutt or rub finish completely uninterrupted, even if it only costs you 5 extra seconds. That short pause is doing more regulatory work than almost anything else she does. You move her off your chest the moment she climbs on you while you're upset, telling yourself you're simply not in the mood to be touched. But in reality, this is not a diagnostic ability and should never be treated as one, though cats are known to position themselves specifically where they can register breathing rate and shifting body heat at extremely close range. Pushing her off removes the one steady source of weight and warmth that's been associated with lowering physiological stress markers in the person underneath her. You created the very discomfort you were trying to escape by removing the thing that was actually helping regulate it. Over time, this teaches her that climbing on you during hard moments gets her pushed away, so she eventually stops trying. Let the weight stay for a few minutes before moving her, even if it feels inconvenient in the moment. Those few minutes are doing more than almost anything else available to you right then. You think her staring at you from across the room means she's plotting something or sulking about being ignored. But in reality, cats under perceived threat or uncertainty shift from contact-seeking behavior to surveillance behavior, watching from a safe distance specifically to finish assessing a situation before approaching. Calling her over too quickly interrupts an assessment process she genuinely needs to complete before she can relax around you. You're the one extending her stress by rushing a process that has its own natural timeline. The longer you interrupt it, the longer the assessment has to restart from the beginning. Stay still and let her finish watching instead of forcing the moment. She comes to you faster once the assessment runs its full course on her own. You assume the extra meowing at strange hours means she just wants food again, the same conclusion you've always jumped to. But in reality, cats increase solicitation calls specifically when the environment around them feels less stable, not only when the food bowl happens to be empty. Feeding her every single time she meows during these stretches reinforces exactly the wrong signal and teaches her that food is the only response on offer. You're training her to ask for the wrong thing because it's the easiest thing for you to give. This is an old simple instinct hijacked by a habit you built without noticing. Check what's actually different in your own state first, then respond with attention and presence instead of immediately reaching for the food bowl. You think her dilated pupils and sudden mid-room freeze mean she heard a sound you missed somewhere in the house. But in reality, this is a mirrored arousal response, her nervous system reacting directly to a shift in yours, the same involuntary synchronization your own body performs around someone visibly in distress. Reacting to her as though something is wrong with her, rather than recognizing it's a reflection of you, leaves the actual trigger completely unaddressed. You're treating the symptom while missing the source standing right in front of you. This is a pattern that repeats every single time, whether you notice it or not. Notice your own state in that exact moment instead of looking around the room for an explanation. She's reflecting it back at you in real time, almost like a mirror with fur. You're surprised when she suddenly chooses to sleep right beside you instead of at the foot of the bed where she usually settles. But in reality, this is the same proximity-seeking behavior documented repeatedly in attachment studies, a deliberate choice of contact over comfort, picking you over the objectively warmer spot on the blanket. Moving her back to her spot out of pure habit removes the one form of contact she actively chose on purpose that night. You're undoing the one thing she decided to do specifically for you, without even registering that it was a decision. Therefore, what looks like random repositioning is actually closer to a quiet vote of confidence. Let her stay exactly where she repositions herself instead of correcting it. It's a choice, not an accident, and it deserves to be treated like one. You get frustrated when she disappears under the bed for hours on a hard day, assuming she's simply avoiding you out of spite or disinterest. But in reality, prolonged emotional intensity in a room can overstimulate a cat's sensory system well past its comfortable threshold, and retreating afterward is regulation, not rejection. Coaxing her out repeatedly only extends the total time she needs in order to fully reset. You're the one delaying her return without ever realizing that's exactly what your coaxing is doing. The irony is that the more you chase her out, the longer she stays hidden. Leave food and water near the hiding spot and let her come out entirely on her own terms. She always does, usually faster than you'd expect once the pressure is removed. You think her sudden silence means she's lost interest in you for the day, the opposite of what you'd expect from a cat that's paying close attention. But in reality, cats often go quiet rather than louder around an owner's heightened distress, vocalizing less while shifting fully into observation mode instead. Filling that silence by talking more or physically pulling her closer can push her further into watch mode rather than approach mode. You're escalating the exact behavior you're trying to stop, simply by responding to it the wrong way. This is a pattern cat owners consistently misread because it runs backward from human intuition. Sit quietly near her instead of pulling her in directly. Calm proximity reads as safer to her nervous system than direct, forced contact ever will. You assume she's being dramatic when she suddenly avoids her usual spot on the couch beside you for no apparent reason. But in reality, cats associate specific locations in the home with specific emotional states experienced nearby, and a single tense moment can mark a spot temporarily in her memory. Forcing her back to her spot attaches the tension to the location permanently instead of letting the association fade naturally. You're the one turning a temporary fixable association into a lasting one through repeated correction. Cats in the wild do this with entire sections of territory after a single bad encounter, and your couch is no different to her. Let her choose a new spot for a few days instead of insisting on the old one. The original spot resets on its own once enough calm time passes near it. You think her tail flicking rapidly while she watches you means she's irritated specifically at you for something you did. But in reality, rapid tail movement is primarily a sign of internal conflict or overstimulation, an old hunting-related signal repurposed to communicate that she's processing too much input right now. Punishing or scolding her for what looks like attitude during this state only adds another layer of stimulation to a system that's already overloaded. You're adding pressure to a moment that needed the opposite of pressure. This single misread accounts for a huge share of unnecessary tension between cats and owners during hard weeks. Give her physical space the moment you see the tail start, rather than approaching to fix the mood. The flicking settles on its own once the input load drops back down. You assume she's just hungry again when she starts pacing back and forth near you instead of near her food bowl, where pacing usually happens. But in reality, this kind of displaced pacing is a known stress displacement behavior, energy that has nowhere else productive to go getting rerouted into repetitive movement near the person she's focused on. Redirecting her to the food bowl every time misreads the actual need and reinforces the wrong solution all over again. You're solving a problem that was never really about food in the first place. Over time, this teaches her that pacing near you gets answered with food instead of with the attention the behavior was actually requesting. Offer a short, calm interaction first, even 30 seconds of stillness together, before reaching for the food at all. You think it's strange or even a little funny when she suddenly grooms herself excessively right in front of you during a tense moment. But in reality, displacement grooming is one of the most well-documented self-soothing behaviors in cats, a redirection of anxious energy into a repetitive, controllable action when the environment feels unpredictable. Laughing it off or ignoring it treats a real coping mechanism as a quirky habit with no underlying cause. You're missing a direct signal that something in the room, very likely you, has shifted into territory she finds harder to read. Left unaddressed across enough hard days, this self-soothing can escalate into over-grooming that damages the coat or skin. Notice the timing of the grooming relative to your own mood instead of dismissing it, and give her calmer, more predictable signals in that moment if you can. And here's the one that unsettles even veterinarians, the one we promised at the very start. Multiple cat owners have independently reported their cat's behavior changing days before a serious medical diagnosis, refusing to leave one specific spot on the owner's body, days before anything was medically confirmed by a doctor. To be completely clear, this is not a diagnostic ability of any kind, and a cat is never a substitute for medical care under any circumstances. Researchers have not established a reliable predictive mechanism behind these reports, and they remain anecdotal rather than proven. But dismissing the pattern entirely as coincidence means risking the one moment your cat might be trying to get you to pay attention to yourself before you're ready to. If something feels off in your own body and your cat suddenly won't leave your side, that combination is worth noticing, not brushing away as just another quirky cat moment. Talk to a doctor if something feels wrong in you. Don't wait around for her to be the only one in the room who noticed first. If your cat has ever acted strange right before you got sick, or right after a hard day you never said out loud to anyone, tell us exactly what she did in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this changed the way you see her watching you from across the room, the next video breaks down the one sound she makes that means the complete opposite of what you've always assumed it does.